Welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Kohatsu Cave of Games. I'm Nathan, and today I will talk about a game that I've played for the past couple of months and I wanted to make a video about. The game is called Edo. Edo is what Tokyo used to be called before the restoration. So back when there was samurai and the Tokugawa shogunate kind of ruled Japan, they set up in Edo. They had Edo Castle, which is now Tokyo. But in this game, you're basically initially building up Edo. So you've got the main city of Edo and then all of the principalities around Edo, and you're sending out samurai into the land to basically build up the city. The game is a Euro. It employs a lot of traditional mechanics, I would say. The main two being action selection mixed with worker placement in actually a pretty unique way, which I'll show you at the table, but I really dig it. And people that have played it also really dig it. It's kind of a neat, clever little mechanic. The other main thing that I really like about this game is I don't want to say hate, but I dislike games that have just a tremendous amount of victory points. Like when I play two-player Le Havre, or even Lords of Waterdeep, or Stone Age, the victory points could be like 150, 200. So the final score will be like 210 to 170. And I don't like that big point spread as much as like in Edo. Each point matters. Every single point is critical. The first player to 12 triggers the end game. So the victory point scale actually I think only goes up to 20 or 22. So every point matters. So you're really fighting to get a victory point, let alone 2 or 3 in one action. So I like that more personally, but that I'm going off on a tangent. The basics of the game is pretty much action selection with worker placement. You have different resources that you collect by using those actions, and then you use those resources to acquire victory points, either through trading with a merchant or by building things around the city. So I'll just bring it to the table. You can take a look at it and see if it's a game that you will like as well. Okay, so here we are at the table. I'm going to do my best to try to keep this short, but I want to make sure everybody understands how to play. I'll just skim over the board real quick so you can take a look at it, take a look at the components, at the art of the game, which I personally love. The detail of the art really kind of captures that period of life in Japan without going too overboard or like commercial, I would say, but it does the job very beautifully, I think. The components are nice and thick. This is wood, stone, and this is a barrel of rice. When you start the game, you'll have your 3 action panels. You have your little action plank, your officials, your houses, and 1 trading post, which I call the bread loaf. You'll start with 3 barrels of rice and 20 bucks, or rue, but I'll just call it bucks, because Edo had rue before the Japanese yen was established. Anyway, the basics of this game is your victory point track right here. Everyone starts at 0. and the first person to hit 12 will trigger the end game. After that, you do final scoring, and whoever's the furthest ahead will win. Okay, so before I go into too much detail about how a turn works and all that stuff, I'll tell you how to set up the board for a 4-player game. The board is 2-sided. The flip side of this is for a 2-player game, and this is for a 3-player or a 4-player game. I'll set up everything how it is for a 4-player game. The rules are a little iffy. You might have to reread them a couple times, but everything for a 4-player game pretty much flows for a 3 or a 2. So in a 4-player game, the first thing you need to do is set up the cities. You can randomly or cooperatively decide on which of the 3 outlying cities will not be used for the game. You're actually only going to use 2. Whatever cities that you choose, there's a bunch of these little random tiles with the 4 stones indicating 4-player. You'll assign 1 to each city. Basically, at the end of each turn, whoever has majority control of that city will earn income. So if there's only 1 person in that city, that person will earn 8 rue, and then it'll go down from there. And I'll explain how ties work and everything, but that's basically just tells you how much money you'll earn if you build in this city. Same with this. And then there's one for Edo as well. Next, you'll have to block out one of the resource production areas. There are 2 resource production areas for each of the 3 resource types. That color circle is for wood. There's one here, and there's one over here. So you can randomly or collectively decide which one to basically cancel out, meaning that will not be available for this game. You will then do the same for your rice production. You could either cover up that one or the one up there, and the same for stone. So when you play a 4-player game, there's actually only 1 spot to get rice, wood, and stone. So it's very, very tight, very competitive. After you've done that, the board is basically set up, and you can go ahead and determine start player randomly. The start player will get both of these little guys. This is the merchant. The start player will put the merchant in any one of these 3 blue river spaces. And they'll get the start player indicator, which is just a white official. And at the end of every turn, that will rotate to the next player. So everybody will get a chance to become the start player that way. After you've determined start player, then starting with a player to the right of the start player, going against the grain of clockwise, which is how game flow will happen. So starting with the person to the right, that person gets to decide one of 2 things as their initial start conditions. They can either choose to start to pick one of the 2 cities to place an official in and build a house, or they can pick up one of these 5 kind of care packages to start the game. They'll pick one of the 2. After that player has picked, it'll go to the next player in order, and it'll go around to the start player. After that happens, it'll just keep on going back to the person on your right, or to the right of the start player, where they'll pick the other option that they didn't pick the first time. So it's basically up to you if you want to start in a city and get a head start on generating some income, or if you wanted to jump start on some resources so you could do other things in the game besides owning a place in the city. So basically, you'll go around twice and say it's my turn, I'll take my official and put it here, and build a house here. And then when it comes back around to me again, say like the money's left, so I'll take the 10 rue. After that is done, everything that has not been picked gets cleared off the board. The last thing to do after everybody's selected their stuff to start the board is there's this merchant guy that needs to be put somewhere on the board. The start player determines which one of the 3 blue river spaces this guy starts at, but he can move around the board. So I'll just put him there. The board is now complete, and I could start discussing what you do on your turn. A complete round consists of you selecting your actions and placing your workers depending on what you want to do with those actions. After everybody has simultaneously selected their stuff, it's all hidden because you'll be placing your orders in your little slot like that so nobody can see what you're picking. So after everybody's selected their actions, the start player will reveal their first action pane, which then reveals how many guys they have decided to activate that action. Then they will perform that action. After the start player has revealed their first pane, it'll go around clockwise with everybody revealing their first pane. Then it comes back to the start player for the second pane, goes around. Then the third pane goes around. After that, everybody has executed their actions, and you go to the end of the turn, which is you have to pay your workers that are out on the board, and you'll get income. And I'll go more into detail, but that's your basic turn structures. You'll select actions, you'll execute those actions, and then you'll do your cleanup, and then the next round will begin. The main focus of this game revolves around these guys. The easiest way to explain them is along the bottom of each of the 4 actions that are available to you, you'll see little icons. And here you'll see little white guys. And here you'll see little white guys with a little gray shadow. And over here you'll see 2 white guys that are both sharing a single little gray guy in the back. Well, what this simply means is anytime you see a white guy, that indicates an official to be placed here to correspond with the action itself. If you ever see a white guy with the gray guy standing behind him, then that means that action can only be used in coordination with the guy that you have out on the board, who is called a samurai. So if you want to take this wood action, you're going to need one guy here on your action selection pane, and you're going to need one samurai out on the board in a wood area. So I'll demonstrate how that works, but that's basically it. And that iconography means that you need 2 officials here to activate one samurai out on the board. Okay? So very simply put, I'm just going to go and breeze through all of the actions that are available to you. So starting with this action right here, if you select that and place it here on this panel like that, and take one of your officials and place it in this first slot, then that means when this pane activates, you're going to collect 1 barrel of rice. If you place 2 guys here, then both of these guys will activate at the same time when you reveal this action, and you'll pick up 2 barrels of rice. You can also just put the action up and not put any workers here, which basically means you're not collecting any rice at all, but you need to just select an action anyway. So hopefully that general concept makes sense, because that's how all of the actions work. So for this pane, you can either have an official collect a barrel of rice, you can have an official collect 5 roux, you can have an official on your board basically go tell a samurai to gather wood. Now to explain that, we'll go over here to the wood area. Remember at the beginning of the game, you have a samurai on the board? Well, if this samurai ended up being over here, and you selected that action, then that official will tell the samurai to collect wood. This chart tells you how much wood you collect based on the number of people that are in this square. So if there's more people competing for wood, then your action will result in less wood. So how do you get from here to there, you might ask? Well, that's simple. Before you reveal any action pane, you have the option to spend money to move your samurai on the board. There is no limit to how many samurai you can move and how far they can move. Well, there is. It's the amount of money you have. But, so say you're wanting to collect wood and your samurai is here. So before you reveal this pane, you would simply just count out the spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You would spend 5 rue first, and then you would reveal this pane. And you have one official here, and you've got one samurai over on the wood, so you can perform this wood action. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. If you have 2 officials here, each official needs their own samurai on that square in order to activate that action. So for this to work, you would need another samurai out on the board. Now, as you could probably do the math, if you want to do this action 2 times, if there are 2 guys on the square, you can only collect 2 wood. So you just spent 2 actions to get 4 wood instead of 1 action to collect 3. So resources are incredibly tight in this game. That might be something you have to do to get your plan to work. But in order to do it, you would need 2 samurais here and 2 officials down here. Okay, moving on. This is a very important and unique action. If you put a guy here, these X's mean that you can only perform this action that many times, which is 1. You can give up a barrel of rice to hire another official. If you do that, you just give up a barrel of rice, and you go over here to the neutral nude color guys, and you get a new official to be added to your board. You can't use him on any of the actions that you've already selected for this turn, but he's available for the rest of the turns of the game. The only restriction with this guy is that he can never turn into a samurai, meaning he can never be brought to the board and move around. He always has to be an official for your action selection. Moving on, this is just like the wood action, but it's for stone. This is just like the wood action, but it's for rice. Going on to the final tile. This is another rice action that's just like the wood action. This is called the travel action. This action is pretty unique. It's the only way that you can get more guys onto the board. If you have an official here, and you select this action, then you have 2 choices. You can either choose the travel action, or you can choose the move action. If you choose the travel action, then your little samurai guy will enter Edo in one of many spaces. Any space that shows an archway, your official can enter. Once your official enters the map, he is called a samurai, and he is referred to as the little gray indicator. The plus and minus to that is you just lost an action selection down here, basically a worker to perform moves, but you've gained an ability to get resources out here and build things and whatnot. So that whole mechanic is super interesting because it limits the amount of things you can do in your turn, but it's a necessary evil because you need to get guys out there to do things for you. So that's why it's an awesome game. If you do not choose the travel action, then you can choose the move action, which lets you move up to 2 samurai you have on the board anywhere for no cost. They become kind of like a teleporting samurai of sorts. So if you choose that action, then you could just take this guy and say, he needs to go over here and get wood. And you didn't have to pay any money or anything. It's an either or, but you can choose the either or depending on how many guys you have here. So you can basically send a guy onto the board with that, and you can never send this guy onto the board, so if you have him select this action, then he automatically chooses the move action. So this is normally how I would set up this move. When it activates, this guy would enter a gate here, and then this guy would let him move anywhere on the board, plus one of his buddies that's already out on the board. So that's how it's most efficiently used. Moving on to this guy is the merchant, which is that guy you placed on the river square. Just like your samurai, you can pay money to move the merchant anywhere as well. And it's the same concept as the wood or rice or stone, as to where you can activate him if you have a guy here on the action selection side and a samurai hanging out with the merchant. If you want to activate the merchant twice, then just like always, you've got to have 2 samurai hanging out with the merchant. The merchant is nice because it goes over here to the merchant stack. This is future cast stuff, so you always know what the merchant's going to be up to next. This is what the merchant is currently offering. For 2 Ru, you can buy 1 wood. You can perform this action twice, but you have to activate him twice, just like I explained. Or you can spend 7 Ru and give up a rice to get 1 victory point. Victory points, like I said in the intro, are extremely important and hard to get. So it is very nice for you to spend some time to get victory points through the merchant. Because if you only visit him 3 times during the game, that's 3 points. If it's the first to 12 to win, then that's 25% of your points. So that's it could be pretty good. But that's the merchant. Moving on, this is how you acquire new action panes. You go here, you spend 5 Ru, and you acquire a new order. These are the new orders. You're only allowed 2 instead of 4, but basically whatever you pick up just gets added to your stockpile, which gives you more choices. And more choices are always very, very nice. So let's take a look at this guy, for example. Instead of the normal 5 Ru, you can get 10 Ru with this. Or on the back side, you can have 2 officials here. So if you do one of these numbers, then he'll activate 1 samurai that's out on the stone space and collect 2 times the number of stone. So if I had a samurai here, with that action, if I had my 2 here and my 1 out here, then he collects 6 stone. So if you think back to my example of having 1 or 2 guys out here, this action is extremely powerful to get additional stone without having to sacrifice the number of samurai out here. You use less samurai and get more resources. So acquiring these guys is critical to win the game. As soon as somebody picks one of these and adds it to their stockpile, the next one just gets immediately drawn, and that's the end of that action. The book comes with explanations on how all of those work. I've spent enough time already, so have fun on those on your own. The last thing to discuss for your actions is building. And that's this action right here. You can build one of 3 things in the game, and the game comes with a reference card to let you know what those things cost in order to build. So basically, with this build action, you need to have 1 official here, and you need to have 1 samurai in one of the 3 city locations. Here, here, or here in this particular game. Once you have that, you can build something in that city. You can build a house with 1 stone and 2 wood and 5 Ru. When you do that, you'll get 1 victory point, and you'll take a house and place it wherever you built it at, starting with that circle, with the entry to the circle and wrapping around. That's the main way to get victory points in the game, and it's the main way to maintain income, because you have to build influence in the cities in order to get income. You have one of these guys, the bread boxes. They take 5 wood and 15 rue. They get you 2 victory points. And they can be built in one of the outskirts, but they cannot be built in the capital. Now the main benefit of this guy comes at the end of the turn, which I'll explain in a little bit, but that's how you build those guys. The last build option is a fortress, which is 5 stone, 1 wood, and 20 rue for 3 victory points. The fortresses are neutral. They don't count towards your influence in a city. The requirements to build this are you have to have at least one existing structure in the city itself, and you have to have at least 2 cities built or 2 houses built before you can build a fortress. So it's a ratio of 2 to 1. The trading houses don't count towards that goal. So if I built a fortress here, then anybody needs to build 2 more houses before anybody can build 1 more fortress. So it's always a 2 houses, then 1 fortress thing. Okay? The main benefit of that is 3 victory points. So it's 25% of your goal every time you build one of these. So if you see somebody going for a fortress, then try to limit their ability to get stone. Because then they'll jump 3 points. That's all the actions that you can take. As you can see, I've probably destroyed your mind about it. But essentially, you're just going to have to decide what you want to do. Take your officials and just put them however you want and activate them and see if you get victory points, and you're basically just continually trying to convert resources to houses to get victory points. That was the sound of my son. Alright, now I'm going to go to the end of the turn. So say everybody has done their 3 deals. The next thing you do is you have to pay your samurai that are out on the field. So after everybody's performed all 3 of their actions, then we're basically doing the bookkeeping step of the round now. Everybody has to pay 1 barrel of rice for every worker they have, or every samurai they have out on the board. You can elect to not pay them, or if you cannot pay them, then you have to remove samurai from the board until you can, or you're satisfied. But basically, if you don't have any rice, then all of the samurai come back to your little pool and become officials again. And you need to send them out using the travel action. So if you want to keep samurai out on the board, you need rice in order to do that. That payment is due at the end of every round. After you've paid your rice, then you'll collect income. Income is based on the influence of each city, where houses count as 1 point towards influence, and trade posts count as 2 points towards influence. So I'd have a total of 4 influence in this city, 0 here and 0 here. If there is a tie, then the tie is broken by whoever built first in that city. So once you've established who's first, second, third, or fourth, then that's how much money you'll get. So if there's 3 people in this city and I have the majority of the influence, then I would get 5 rue, second place would get 2, and then third would get 1. And so all 3 cities would pay out their monies to each player, and then everybody would take back their action panels, all the boards would be cleared, and this would be passed to the next person clockwise. The next round would begin by this going away, that being placed there as the active merchant tile, and the next tile would be flipped over. Then everybody just starts selecting their actions again, and then just keeps going around like that until either this stack runs out or someone hits 12. As soon as that happens, at the end of the turn, after you've paid your rice for your samurai and collected 1 final income, the game is over. Your end game VP bonuses would be for every samurai you've kept out on the board is worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. And for every 50 bucks you have left over at the end of the game is also 1 victory point. This indicates that you can never have more than 10 of any one resource. And that's basically this little play rate. So, that's the entire game. Hopefully I've explained everything in a manner that is not too confusing, because I really do enjoy this game. Let me set up for some final thoughts. Okay, so that's Ero. It's by Quinn Games. I don't know if I mentioned that. I hope I did, because the publisher deserves a lot of credit for this game. The components are great. I am a sucker for the theme. Overall, just a very great Euro. I believe that it was released, it got its funding through Kickstarter. I don't know how available it is. I bought mine at our friendly local game store. But I would highly recommend that you purchase it if you're a fan of Meteor Euros. Meteor is subjective. I would classify this as a medium difficulty game, so I'd peg it with like Kalis or Trois. But it's definitely not like a Venos or New Era, 51st State New Era. Those are brain exploders. So this one's pretty simple. It would take probably as long as it took me to explain it to you guys, pretty much 20 minutes or so to explain the whole game in its entirety. Depending on the group that I'm playing with, I'll just say this is how you get resources and this is how you build buildings. We'll go through a round and then I'll explain the rest of the actions in the next following round. And then if they select a special action, then I'll just kind of help them out and say this one's really good, you should get it. Because it's one of those games where you have to feel through the whole game before you get a really good handle on it, so when you play it the second time, everybody's on the same page. Definitely don't go for a competitive first playthrough of this game, because the new players won't win if you've played it before. Just the mechanics are that interesting when you're trying to get resources and stuff. The key points to always keep in mind when playing this is before you reveal your activation, you can pay to move any of your samurai or the merchant. It is not dependent on the action that you picked. So the game plays clockwise, so you're trying to always keep an eye on what other people might be doing or what they're close to doing. So if you think that they're going to try to snipe a merchant sale, then if it's only $2 for you to move it as far away from him as possible, then do it. If you think that the next person in line is really starving for rice and you've just got an extra samurai until your next turn, then pay to move that samurai onto the rice so they get less rice. Don't underestimate the ability to spend money in order to screw your other players. I think that's about it. If you have any questions, just ask on the Board Game Geek thread of this video or on YouTube and I'll answer it. And that's about it. Hopefully you guys will pick it up, because it's awesome and deserves a lot more light shown on it. Alrighty? So until next time, see you later.